Hello and welcome to another new moon forecast. It is sweltering here in the Eastern Cape in South Africa. It's almost 40 degrees. I know my sister in the UK is saying it's freezing there, almost 0 degrees. So was just saying it would be wonderful if we could just portal through to each other's environment. She could come into my sauna and I could go into her freezer for just a little while until we can reset our poor nervous systems. So anywhere, and even more our thermostats, anywhere you are in the world, if you're experiencing some extreme heat or cold or pressurized situations, whichever way you look at them, I am here to share a little bit about the energetics in the heavens about why that may be occurring. So let's share screen. And I'm not sure if you have watched, but I have also done a video to explain to you how to draw up your own chart and then be able to kind of understand where in your life these things are showing up. So here's the chart for the new moon in fact, it's a super moon, which means it's closer to the planet, which actually does impact, because the moon has such a gravitational thing, she really can be impactful in our weather in some ways. So this super new moon in Aquarius is happening on the 21st. Wait, just let me double check that date. Yes, the 21st. Sorry, it's been a bit of a roller coaster getting kids back to school and all of those things. And so I'm just trying to recalibrate. Not only that, another big part of the reason this is such a moving into this super new moon is that Mars went direct last week. Mercury goes direct. Actually, when am I filming this? Today. Mercury goes direct today as I'm filming this. No wonder I'm having communication faux pas, but we'll have just turned direct because today is the 18th and the new moon is on the 21st. So we've got all these retrograde things changing direction, and just after, the day after, in fact, it's hours after the new moon that we're looking at today, Uranus stations direct. So for the actual new moon, he's still not quite direct, and then he stations direct. So I've done talks on retrogrades before, and I don't want to dive too deeply into them. Suffice to say, when planets are retrograde, there is this kind of holding pattern, a pulling backwards of whatever that planet relates to, and where it is in whichever sign it's in. So let's take Mercury, for example, stationing today. He's been doing his retrograde in Capricorn. So now you look at Mercury as a planet, and all Mercury does, communication, short trips, travel, healing even. And then you say, in a Capricorn context, what have I been revisiting in my internal narrative? I've been revisiting things about structure, stability, security, top-down power. That's been a big breakdown kind of space for us for a few years already. So that's where Mercury's been doing his retrograde. And in fact, the Capricorn space is really important at the moment. Pluto is coming towards the end of his tenure in Capricorn, and because Pluto has an elliptical orbit, he spends a different amount of time in every sign, but he started in Capricorn in 2008. Luckily, I can pinpoint that to the birth of my first child, so I can always get that time frame. So we've got about a 15-year journey of Pluto in Capricorn, and this is a real generational space of change and transformation and power struggles. And because Capricorn has a top-down power kind of context, Pluto's been in there transforming those things. Where have the people at the top forgotten about the people below them, and where has that created a problem? And how can Pluto's kind of like a bomb, he goes in and he blows up things that need to be brought down a peg or two, and he pushes up things that need to come up a peg or two. And that's kind of how he operates. So he's been doing that through Capricorn for a very long time. So this last Mercury retrograde, that by the new moon, we're still in the shadow of it, but we're just kind of getting to the point of, wow, I've really had a good reflection on this whole Pluto paradigm through Capricorn. And Pluto is in fact in March moving into Aquarius for the first time, where he dips his toe in and then he will retrograde back out, and he'll only be fully in Aquarius next year, December, I think it is. And that is going to be a 20-year story. So he's going to spend 20 years in the next sign that he goes into, which is Aquarius. And Aquarius is where we're having this new moon. So my backstory about the whole Capricorn-y space is because this new moon is happening at 1 degree of Aquarius. And we're actually having a sequence of 1 degree new moons. Now, 1 degree, 0 is in fact the first degree of a sign, but 1 degree is still right at the beginning. So we're having this newness, this new beginning, and a new moon is a new beginning. Of course, we have a new moon every month, every 29.5 days, but a new moon is a new beginning in itself. So when a new moon is happening in a new sign, new degree like that, it's like layering of new beginning energy. And this is, I think it's maybe 5 new moons at 1 degree in a row. And I think this is actually the halfway point. I think we're at the 3rd one. So it's like layer upon layer showing us new beginnings. And Aquarius is very, very much a sign of that as well, because Aquarius comes out of the Capricorn structure, order, top-down power, and goes, no, let's move into innovation, freedom, exploration, innovative new ways of being in the world. And where Capricorn is more like themselves as leader, as power, as that sort of top-down power of, say, a corporation, Aquarius is the people, power to the people. So they have a very different energy. However, the traditional leader for both of them is Saturn. And Saturn's also got a lot to play. I just feel like this new moon has got really good look back potential and really good look forward potential. So we want to look back to the 21st of December 2020, when we had the Great Conjunction, which is the conjunction that happens without fail every 20 years between Saturn and Jupiter. Saturn is constricting, Jupiter is expanding. The two of them come together every 20 years in a different sign. Now, they have spent something like the last few centuries coming together in Earth signs. And in December 2020, the 21st of December, on the solstice, doesn't always happen exactly like that, on the solstice point, 2020, December, the two of them came together at 0 degrees of Aquarius, just a degree off where we are now. So this is really, really powerful. Well, I just saw a whole glitchy thing going on there. I hope this records all right. Well, we'll check it. Anyway, so I was saying that the Great Conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn happened at 0 degrees of Aquarius, December 21st, 2020. And that point is being triggered now. So if you look back to what was going on in your life then, if you look back at what was going on politically, collectively, financially, on a global scale, and personally, you're going to get a really good insight about what we're looking at again now. And then if you look forward into March, when Pluto steps into 0 degrees of Aquarius, you're going to be getting, for this new moon, you're going to be getting a taste, a flavor, because Pluto's almost there already, of what we might be looking at. And then when Pluto does step into Aquarius, we're going to have even more sort of build up of this. Then he's going to back up a little, do some last checking of his boxes, ticking things off his list in his Capricorn work before moving back into Aquarius. So even though this is a forecast for this new moon, and of course we want to be present in the now moment of what we're working with, this particular one really does have a much bigger potential, which is so ironic because Aquarius is kind of the visionary sign, the sign that's like the eagle flying above everything, kind of sometimes forgets to do the personal looking and is looking more big picture, collective, hive mind, whatever you want to call it. So I just find that quite fascinating. Also, Uranus and Saturn have been doing that square dance from 2021, 2022. It's, for the most part, it's done now, although we're still feeling the tremors of that. And Aquarius and Saturn are the two rulers, not Aquarius, Uranus and Saturn are the two rulers of Aquarius. So Saturn is the traditional ruler. in ancient astrology and before we knew about Uranus. And since Uranus has come into our consciousness, it's been more looked at as kind of like the modern ruler. It's been associated, its personality traits, its way of operating is most similar to Aquarius. So those two signs are also very, very much at play. And Saturn, the one planet who is the traditional ruler, is in Aquarius now, but will soon be moving out of Aquarius. Maybe I'll circle it for you. Okay, so here is Saturn. And let's blow it up. There we go. There's Saturn, and he's in the last degrees, and he's going to be moving in March. The same month Pluto moves, here's Pluto, into Aquarius, Saturn moves into Pisces. So they're both switching signs, and that's a big deal for these outer planets. Saturn takes 2.5 to 3 years in a sign, so he doesn't move quickly. In fact, he moved into Aquarius December 21st, 2020, and this is when he's going to be moving out. So while we're having this new moon in Aquarius, it's going to be the last time for 28 odd years that we're going to have a new moon in Aquarius with Saturn, the traditional ruler of the sign, in the sign. So this is not something that happens very often. So Saturn's very involved in this conversation. And just a day after we've had this new moon, we will have Venus, who's also in Aquarius right now, coming up to Saturn, coming to meet Saturn. And she's about our values. This happens just like around about once a year that Venus meets Saturn in the sky. But this will be the last time she's going to meet him also in his own sign for the next 28 odd years. So it's also quite a transitional thing. And Venus is our value system. And I find this interesting now as well. And if I can give you a little like footnote in your journaling, if you're a journaler or however you recall your stuff, Venus is having a big story this year. She's going to do a retrograde, and she's doing a retrograde in Leo on the other side of the pond from Aquarius, 180 degrees from one another, opposite. There's that dynamic, the polarity. So if you look during this kind of journey that we're in for the Aquarius new moon, just leading up to it, just going past it, and you have a feeling on what you value, how you want to love and be loved, and also your own personal finances. Venus has a lot to do with finances too, so look at that too. And if you kind of look at the storyline that's happening now, when Venus, late July, starts going into her retrograde, this is opposite that energy. So it's going to have a same and different kind of feel. When we get to that retrograde, some of the reflections you do now, you will maybe understand a little bit more when we get to the Leo retrograde. And I don't want to go too off track speaking into Venus's retrograde in Leo now. That's down the line, and we will definitely touch on that because it's a big part of this year. It's a big signature. But just knowing that it's coming in about 6 months' time, and that gives us that 6 months is always a nice cyclical process to look at for several of the planets of about where they get to their opposite point of where they are now. So that's also very much at play here. And all of that, there's going to be 4 planets, Sun, Moon, Venus. Here we go. Sun and Moon, Venus and Saturn are all in Aquarius. And we've also got Mars in Gemini. Those are all in air signs. That's a lot of air happening, right? And Mars has been sitting on the 8th degree of Gemini. He was stuck at 8 degrees, which is where he stopped moving retrograde, but that's always a slowing down. He stopped there, he held there, he held. Now he's moving forward, but he's moving forward so minusculely that you can't even get him off that degree point yet. And he's been there for a while. So this is also something where we're eking out, where is our energy being sourced? Because Mars is about sourcing your energy, and he is putting his energy into an air sign. He's been withdrawing his energy. He's been on holiday, vacay somewhere. He's been withdrawing energy, but now he's starting to push back. But the energy is in air. It is in communication. It is in connection. It's a very headspacey, thinky kind of energy. So that's also very much part of this dynamic. And Mercury actually rules Gemini, so Mercury is also in charge of that Mars, and he too is sitting at 8 degrees, having just stationed. And Capricorn to Gemini they're kind of considered to be an angle that can't really see one another. So it's a bit of an irritating kind of thing. It's like, you know that there's somebody watching you, but you can't see that person and you can't figure out who it is. So there's a bit uncomfortable kind of feeling, like I'm being watched. And both of these planets are having this feeling with one another. And they've also just gone through a retrograde, both of them, which is kind of when a planet is in some ways most uncomfortable and most vulnerable. So you might feel like if you've any time where you've just gone through a big intense process and you're still sort of feeling a little bit raw, and then you have this kind of conspiracy theory feeling like somebody can see the inner rawness that you're trying to kind of hide from the world, but somebody's watching you. Now Mars is kind of feeling like that, as if Mercury is doing that to him and judging him, and Mercury's sitting there going as if Mars has a sword in his back. So they're both a little bit uncomfortable. But again, there's so many things in this new moon and in the energy of right now, because even a few days before the new moon, we had the sun on Pluto. So the sun comes once a year to meet up with Pluto, and it's transformation and shadow. In fact, it is also today that I'm filming this, which is the 18th. So it's just a few days prior to the new moon. The sun came into Pluto, and we had this ability to take our brightest light and put it on our darkest shadow, and then see what came to light with that. See what shadow came to light. And then also the moon, just before she reaches the sun for new moon, because she moves much faster, she went over Pluto and said, oh, well, let me put a little moonlight, because I'm also a pretty bright light. However, as I come to new moon, I'm holding less light, so I'm kind of more shadow. So let me hold my little bit of moonlight, which really wants to pull out some of your deep emotional shadow. Let me do that too. So we've been like triggered, we've been super triggered leading up to this new moon. And if you watch my weekly card reading forecasts on YouTube as well, and you go back to this week, you will see that the cards were all upside down, that there was big shadow work to be done. I mean, it's just one of those kind of weeks. It's just meant to be a shadow work week, but it is a very much a turning around energy this week. So the new moon falling at the latter part of the week on the Saturday, depending where in the world you are, by then we will have undergone this big process, and it'll still continue into Sunday when Uranus stations direct. So remember, we mentioned that. Here's Uranus. He stations direct just hours after the new moon. And he is also one of the rulers of what's going to be going on when the next day as well, Venus meets up with Saturn. So both of the rulers of Aquarius, where we're looking at the primary energies of this new moon, are very activated in and around, but even most especially, I would say, the day after the new moon. So there are very many points pushing us to be triggered, pushing us to be uncomfortable, pushing us to be vulnerable, shadowy, dark, raw, exposed, broken open, break down to break through. This is happening for me, not to me kind of stuff. And I just feel it's a very good opportunity for us. I love this saying. I don't know who said it, but when an egg is broken from the outside, life ends. But when it's broken from the inside, life begins. And I think that's very, very much like we are at that point. Do you want somebody to break your egg open for you? Or do you want to have the courage, even if you're afraid, even if it's uncomfortable, to break yourself through? So yeah, that's I'd say that's the biggest essence of this particular moon that I really want to get into. There's always so much more that's happening, but I feel like that's already a lot, and that might be the best place to begin your work. Of course, if you look into my video of saying go and open your chart, look at where that's happening in your own life. Where is 1 degree of Aquarius in your life? And any of those other points that I mentioned, like look at where the Saturn, the 24 degrees, where Saturn and Venus meet up. Where is that in your life? What is that showing up for you? And just start to get a better sense of, okay, this is the overriding energy, but how is that impacting me on a personal level so that I can do my work to be a clearer conduit for the new world that we're creating, because that is what we are. We are creating a new world. We are part of the change if we choose to be, and even if we don't choose to be. So we can choose to be as positive a part of the change as we are able, or we can not choose consciously and instead be blindly falling into part of the problem of society as it is now. I mean, change is uncomfortable, even for those of us who are ready for it and want it. It is uncomfortable at the best of times. And this is a new moon. Remember, it's a super moon, so it's closer. It's like moving in. It's going break the shell. And I believe that the planets or the archetypes or the cosmos or whatever you want to call it always wants us to do our work ourselves, always wants the greatest thing for us. So they're basically saying, you break the egg, don't make us do it, you break the egg. But if we don't break the egg, eventually it will be broken for us, and then we'll have to scoop ourselves as a runny raw egg up and try to mold ourselves from that, which is a lot harder than letting ourselves form within the egg and tapping our way through, coming out saying, okay, I took the time, I did the work, I gave myself the gestational period required to have enough body to come out into the world. Even though I'm still young and new and fresh and vulnerable, here I am, I'm showing up. So I wish you all the best for this new moon. I hope this has been helpful. Please check out my YouTube for other videos that might be helpful for you as well. And my link is, as always, in the bio. Thanks so much. And see you again soon.